Ох, бля.
Russian reactions to the attack on Moscow's refinery are once again cycling through the familiar stages of confusion, denial, and sudden discovery that yes, this particular war still exists and has not been paused for the capital's convenience.
For much of the war, the Kremlin's greatest success was not on the battlefield, but in maintaining the illusion that the conflict was happening somewhere else. Moscow remained insulated from the daily realities faced by Ukrainians. Russians could watch reports from the front, go to work, visit restaurants, and largely continue life as normal while the war unfolded hundreds of kilometers away. That illusion is now beginning to crack. The reaction from Russian military bloggers and public commentators to Ukraine's latest drone attacks on Moscow reveals a growing sense of frustration and disbelief. Comments such as, "It's time to wake up and stop playing the game of bureaucratic intrigue," and "In Moscow, many people have finally realized that there is a war going on," suggest that even some of the Kremlin's traditional supporters are questioning how Ukraine has managed to repeatedly strike the Russian capital and critical infrastructure. The reference to "what color will the line be today" is particularly telling. It mocks the Kremlin's habit of constantly redefining red lines that supposedly should not be crossed by Ukraine. Over the course of the war, attacks on Crimea, Belgorod, strategic air bases, oil refineries, and now increasingly Moscow itself have repeatedly occurred despite earlier warnings of severe retaliation. For many Russians, the question is no longer whether another red line will be crossed, but what excuse will be offered afterward. Perhaps the most damaging aspect for the Kremlin is that Ukraine is targeting symbols of Russian economic power rather than merely military positions. Refineries, oil depots, logistics hubs, and energy infrastructure form the backbone of Russia's wartime economy. When drones strike facilities around Moscow, they are not simply causing physical damage. They are demonstrating vulnerability at the very center of the Russian state. Russian military bloggers have increasingly shifted from celebrating battlefield advances to demanding answers. Why are Ukrainian drones reaching Moscow? Why are strategic facilities repeatedly exposed? Why does the world's second-largest military struggle to protect some of its most important economic assets? These questions strike directly at Vladimir Putin's carefully cultivated image. Since coming to power, Putin has portrayed himself as the guarantor of stability, security, and state competence. The social contract was simple: Russians would accept political restrictions in exchange for safety and order. Every successful Ukrainian strike on Moscow challenges that bargain. The public reaction is equally significant. Videos of Moscow residents laughing nervously or reacting with disbelief during drone attacks reflect a psychological shift. What was once a distant television war is becoming a domestic reality. Air raid disruptions, airport closures, refinery fires, and visible explosions force ordinary Russians to confront consequences that were previously reserved for Ukrainians. Ukraine's drone campaign is therefore achieving effects far beyond the physical damage it causes. It is undermining confidence in Russian air defenses, exposing weaknesses in the state's ability to protect its own territory, and forcing the Russian public to acknowledge that the war has reached their doorstep. In 2022, the Kremlin sought to bring war to Kiev and force Ukraine into submission. By 2026, Ukraine has managed something few predicted. It has brought the war back to Moscow. The growing complaints from Russian bloggers and citizens are evidence that the psychological battlefield may be becoming just as important as the military one. For the Kremlin, burning refineries can be repaired. A damaged image of invulnerability is far harder to rebuild.
This is fucked. This is just a fact. I have never ever seen such a shitty morning. 4 explosions just now.
Damn, this is just...
I am just in shock. Nikita even says to me, "Katya, try to get some sleep. What is happening? I can hear them. They just flew by like that. I have probably seen 10 drones just this morning."
Just look at this. This is fucked up, girls. What's going on there?
There are several plots there too. Look, behind that grey one, there is another black one.
There must have been 5 hits just in the industrial zone. I don't understand why they aren't shooting them down. They've been flying for a long time.
Damn! Holy shit! That is fucking epic! What the fuck? Where the hell did I end up?
You're in the zone, damn it. Know where we're flying from? From the fruit farm? Fuck
from
it.
the fruit farm, yeah. See, the Pantsir-S are working.
Documentation. We ended up in some kind of calamity.
Brother, come on. I don't want to work today.
Fuck. You! I cheated this procedure. Why the hell do you need it? Everything is burning. All of Moscow is burning to hell.
Look, all the factories are burning to hell. I am getting the hell out of here. To hell with it all, damn it. I cheated this procedure, damn it. Look, all of Moscow is burning to hell. Look, everything is burning. Everything is just burning to hell, damn it. Look, they are shooting. Look, they are flying right over our heads.
The latest Ukrainian drone attacks on Moscow have exposed a problem that may be even more embarrassing for the Kremlin than the strikes themselves. The apparent inability of Russian air defenses to reliably protect the country's most important city without causing damage of their own. Russian authorities reported a long list of incidents across the Moscow region. In Elektrostal, debris damaged a private residence and injured a civilian. In Zhukovsky, a drone struck an apartment building. In Lyubertsy, industrial and civilian facilities were damaged. In the Chekhov district, homes and outbuildings were destroyed. Fires erupted at multiple locations while emergency services scrambled across the capital's outskirts. At the center of the chaos stood the Moscow oil refinery, burning for the second time in a single week. The Kremlin has long promoted Moscow as one of the most heavily protected cities in the world. Layered air defense systems, electronic warfare complexes, anti-aircraft missiles, and radar networks were supposed to create an impenetrable shield around the Russian capital. Yet the images emerging from Kapotnia tell a different story. What Russians are witnessing is not merely a successful Ukrainian drone raid. They are witnessing a breakdown of the narrative that Moscow is untouchable. Perhaps the most striking aspect of the attack is that the damage appears to have spread far beyond the intended military target. Reports from Russian channels show fires in residential districts, damaged buildings, and destruction scattered across multiple locations. Whether caused by falling drone debris, interceptor missile fragments, or air defense systems engaging targets over populated areas, the result is the same for ordinary residents. Destruction is appearing in neighborhoods that were once considered completely safe. This creates a difficult dilemma for Russian authorities. If Ukrainian drones are reaching Moscow despite extensive defenses, questions arise about the effectiveness of the system. If air defenses are intercepting drones but causing significant collateral damage in the process, the public still sees burning buildings and emergency vehicles filling the streets. In both scenarios, confidence suffers. For years, Russians could ignore the destruction in places like Belgorod, Kursk, Tuapse, or Ust-Luga. Those regions felt distant from Moscow's political and economic elite. A refinery burning in southern Russia was a headline. A refinery burning in Moscow is a personal experience. The psychological significance cannot be overstated. The average resident of Moscow has spent much of the war insulated from its consequences. Food deliveries continued. Traffic jams remained a greater concern than air raids. The war existed primarily on television screens and government briefings. Now the war is interrupting daily life in the capital itself. The growing frustration visible across Russian military blogs reflects this shift. Many pro-war commentators are no longer asking whether Ukraine can strike Moscow. They are asking why such attacks continue to happen and why critical infrastructure remains vulnerable despite years of promises and enormous defense spending. The repeated strikes against the Moscow refinery are particularly damaging because they attack more than a physical facility. They attack the image of competence. Every new fire suggests that Ukraine is able to identify, reach, and repeatedly hit strategic targets inside the heart of Russia. This is precisely why the attack resonates far beyond the actual damage inflicted. Military setbacks on distant fronts can be hidden behind official statements and carefully edited television reports. Fires visible from Moscow apartment windows cannot. Ukraine's drone campaign is therefore producing effects that extend well beyond economics or military logistics. It is forcing ordinary Russians to confront a reality the Kremlin has spent years trying to avoid. The war is no longer something happening somewhere else. It has arrived in Moscow. And every new fire at the refinery, every damaged apartment building, and every video of air defense missiles streaking across the night sky chips away at one of Vladimir Putin's most valuable political assets, the perception that he can guarantee security inside Russia itself.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you want to support Warthog Defense, please become our member and get early access to new videos, exclusive members-only videos, and become administrator in comment section. The membership link is in the description.
Rescues every day. We had a guy last week at 6 rescues in 6 days. You know, he's doing the job every day.